Do you know what it means to bear it all? Do you actually know how to say yes to what your soul is craving, what you desire? Do you know what is on the other side of your fear and what it fully means to embrace who you are? I saw a meme on Facebook a few months back, and it said, "Did you know you only have 18 summers with your children?" And this was a huge gut punch for me, because my oldest is 14 and my other two are 9 and 6, and I realized I only have 4 summers left with my son. Not only that, I asked myself, have I done enough to cultivate the relationship that I truly desire with my children? And even though I teach this work, we all need to practice what we preach. So this summer, I'm launching the Aligned Parenting Coaching Program. As soon as you register, you're going to gain immediate access to 6 modules, and these 6 modules are going to help you do the work. But while you're doing the work, I know you're going to feel stuck, overwhelmed, or you're going to have personal questions about your personal situations, which is why we have designed this program to fit your needs and your schedule. So in July and August, we have over 14 live coaching sessions where you can literally hop on and ask your questions and listen to other people as well. It doesn't matter where you live in the world, what time zone, what your schedule looks like, as long as you're doing the work, you will see magic happen. And I know you might have more questions, and I've been talking a lot about this program on Instagram. So head on over there, find me at momisincontrol, and check it out. If you want to know more details about the program, go to momisincontrol.com/summer and register today. Hey ladies, guess what? Today I'm excited to share with you Susan Hyatt. She is a master certified life coach who has helped thousands of women transform their bodies and lives. She's the creator of the Bear Process, the Bear Deck, the Bear Podcast, and the online community called Bear Daily. With her fierce Facebook rants, including Whoop Ass Wednesdays, where she reads a fresh batch of hate mail from internet trolls and leaves her sassiness response. Susan has gained the international following of women who love her honesty, humor, and fearlessness. Susan has been featured in Cosmopolitan, Women's World, 17 and O, the Oprah magazine, and just an amazing badass. I had the privilege of speaking to Susan Hyatt, and we talked about this, and I said, what do you want to be remembered as? Because I'm so big on legacy, and I always ask people, what motivates you to get up in the morning? And she said, I want to be a disruptor in diet culture. So we talked a little bit about diet culture, but it was really interesting to see the correlation between diet culture and how women live their lives. So body image is one thing where we want to lose weight and feel good, but realizing as women, we're so ingrained to look a certain way or to be a certain way that we don't realize how that transitions into our parenting and into our other relationships. And I think it's really, really important to just have these uncomfortable conversations to educate ourselves and to learn how our conditioning affects our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health, and our overall well-being. So super, super excited to talk to Susan Hyatt about this. And honestly, what I love about this woman is she just lives an unapologetic life. I asked her, what do your children think of you? And she's like, oh my God, they think I'm crazy. And she's just out there living her best life, speaking her truth, and not giving 2 flying fucks what other people think. So I'm so excited for you to listen to this interview and check out her book, Bear. It's on shelves where you can purchase books anywhere. So Susan, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Heather. I am delighted to be here.
So I dove into Bear, and what I love about this is I feel so the Mom is in Control community is all typically women mothers, and we already have enough pressure on us in the motherhood world.
Yeah.
And then when we strip that role off, when we take that hat off, and it's like, who am I? How do I want to feel in my life? The number one thing I get from women is I don't have enough time.
Yeah.
I don't have enough time for myself. So how did you become Susan Hyatt? Like, how did you become Bear? How did you develop this process? Give us just a little, I'm sure we could be here forever, but just a nutshell version of your story and what that looked like for you.
Well, for sure, I was the opposite of Bear 13 years ago. I was a stressed out workaholic mom of 2 little kids. My kids are now turning 19 and 21. But at the time they were little kids. I was selling real estate and I was making a lot of money and everything on the outside looked great. But on the inside, I was dying. I was trying to keep all the plates spinning and, not taking care of myself at all. And so I went from really being this workaholic junk food junkie to Susan, who you see today, who is devoted to pleasure and who has this life coaching business. And the thing that really kicked off the change in me was realizing that my mom came to visit for a holiday. It was Easter weekend. And she made me promise before she came to visit that I wouldn't work. And so that should tell you something. Like I was always working. She was like, I'm going to come, but I want you to promise me that you're not going to work while I'm there. And so I made my mom this promise. I let all my clients know I was not going to be working. And then I had these out of town clients pop into town because it was their holiday weekend too, with no notice. And they're like, hey, we want to put an offer in on 123 Happy Street. And it was the biggest real estate sale of my career. And so let's just be clear, I did close that sale, but I was mad about it. I went and I signed contracts on Easter Sunday. And I came home and was furious. And my mom was like, hey, how about I keep the kids for a couple of days and you just go do whatever you want to do? And I crumbled to the floor in tears because I had no hobbies and I had neglected all my friends. So I couldn't think of who I would even ask to go do anything with. Mm-hmm. And the only thing I could think of to do was to get caught up on the laundry or go to the grocery store by myself. Like that was what sounded delightful to me at that point in time, which is pretty pathetic. And so I realized I had to make some changes in my life. And so I hired my own coach. I read what I consider to be the best self-help book ever written, which is Finding Your Own North Star by Dr. Martha Beck. Mm-hmm. And I started to really look at how I was killing myself as a wife, as a mom, as a woman by trying to be everything for everybody else and neglecting. I mean, I had no idea. I couldn't even answer that question for my mom. Like, what would I go do other than eat, drink, or shop? I had no idea.
Have you had that conversation with your mom now? Like, was she coaching you? Like, did she know what she was doing of like, I'll take the kids. You go do what you want to do for yourself for a few days, hoping that you would have your little nervous breakdown.
Well, I was raised in the southern part of the United States. So in a very southern mama way, for sure. She said these words to me like, what has happened to my daughter? This is not Susan. So get your life right, basically. And she was just like, it was a huge wake up call for me in that that was what started me down the road of real self-discovery and trying to figure out who really am I and what is it that I want that's not what on the surface appears to be perfect to everybody else.
So did you start to transition your real estate business or did you just let that go? Like what did the beginning phases look like for you and how did you know that like change was unfolding?
So after I purchased Finding Your Own North Star, I still have it. And it honestly looks like I dunked it in the ocean and laid it out in the sun to dry.
I love books like that.
Right? Well, it's salt water from my tears. Like I would sit in the bathtub and weep into the pages of this book. But I started actually doing what the suggested exercises were, and my life started to change. And so at first, I couldn't afford to just say, I'm out of real estate and just walk out in a blaze of glory. At that point in time, I was an equal earner in the household. And unless we made dramatic changes to our lifestyle, I still needed that income. And so I started to think about changes that I could make. And so some changes I started to make in my business was, at the time, was hiring some additional help and setting clearer boundaries with my clients and with other realtors. And then I became so obsessed with that book that I started searching online and learning more about Martha Beck and reading some of her other books. And then I saw that she had something called a life coach training program, which I didn't even know, right, what that was. And I'll never forget, my husband was laying on the couch watching some like violent show like CSI Miami or something. And I had my laptop open and I sent an email to Martha Beck Inc. and Martha answered me personally. Now, that would never happen today, but it really was her. And I'm like, do you have any openings? She's like, yes, we have an opening, I think. Let me have somebody from my team call you tomorrow. And I said to my husband, I'm like, I think I'm going to go to Arizona and train to be a life coach. And he almost fell off the couch. He turned around. He's like, what? You're going to go where? What's a life coach? And I got in, and within 2 weeks, I was on a plane. And it was really being so riveted during that training that on the plane ride back, I wrote my business plan on the back of a Delta napkin and made up my mind. I was like, I am creating a transition plan. I am getting out of real estate and I am starting this coaching practice. And I really realized by going to that training that I had been a coach my whole life. I had been coaching new realtors and doing all sorts of things, leading book clubs and all kinds of things that I didn't have a name for free. And so I was like, this is what I really want to do. And so I came home and I put together a transition plan. And within 90 days, I was out. Like I had a couple of big closings. I saved some money. And I started working nights and weekends, building my coaching practice, and felt comfortable enough to, within 90 days, walk away. And it was really, I look back on it and think, wow, that was gutsy. But at the time I was terrified, but I just felt like I cannot keep living the wrong life.
Yeah. Yeah. Your soul screams at you and it's like, it's time, right? This is not about, oh, we're going to have to cut back a little bit on our like lifestyle. It's like, no, change needs to happen because you legit feel like you're dying.
I did. I mean, I honestly was like, and I also had a moment leading up to that where I had one of those giant SUVs. It was a Toyota Sequoia, like a living room on wheels. And my little kids are like in their car seats with their sippy cups and snacks, and my real estate signs are rattling in the back. And I was on remember Blackberries? I was on my Blackberry yelling at another realtor about a termite inspection report. And I looked in the rearview mirror and saw their little faces. And I was like, this is not how I want my kids to remember their mother. And so it was a real legacy thing for me as well. I started thinking about like, what kind of stories do I want them to tell about their mom? It's not that she's always shoving us in our car seats and racing around town to stuff flower boxes and yell at people.
So do they remember that transition? Because they would have been old enough. Yeah,
they remember. And it's so funny sometimes when they talk about it. They're like, remember when you were miserable? Remember when, like you were always, my personality was always my personality, but I'm so much more fully myself now that like some of it they don't remember. Like I'll say, don't you remember I used to fill in the blank? Like we would go through Wendy's or McDonald's 3 times a day. Don't you remember that? And they're like, sorta. So it's interesting the things they remember and the things that they don't.
So there was something that you mentioned I want to dive into about the whole counting moments and not memories, or counting moments and not calories.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. But this is what I noticed. So I work too with a lot of ambitious women who are like movers and shakers, and, you know, we can make shit happen and move mountains. And a lot of people depend on us. And sometimes it's energetically and you're not even noticing that until you're like, hey, I just need some space. And then all of a sudden it's like, everyone thinks you're cutting them off for life. You're like, no, I'm me. I deserve this space and I'm going to have some boundaries around this. And what I noticed is, I've noticed this in myself and some of the women that I work with, when I'm like, guys, you have this energy. We have this energy. When you're in alignment and you're pointing it in the right direction, holy fuck, you can make magic happen in your life. So whether you're putting that energy into going through the drive-through or putting that energy into meal prepping and being intentional about what is going into your body, like, you can make shit happen. It's just about a course correction.
Totally.
So let's talk about the whole body stuff, because that's another conversation and we could talk about that for hours. But I think it's really important for women to have this conversation, because there is, for myself, previous to getting sick 5 years ago, my philosophy with food, I was never a dieter. I was that, what do they call it? Well, I was told it's called skinny fat. I had fat around my organs inside my body. But if you looked at me, I was leanish, right? I was skinny, quote unquote, culturally skinny. And so I'm like, I don't need to work out. I don't need to worry about my food. Meanwhile, you're unhealthy as fuck, Heather.
Right.
But that's all society cares about, is what you look like.
Right.
So when I got into food, it was this all or nothing mentality. I'm like, oh my gosh, I either need to eat perfect or not at all. And so I was overwhelmed, and my choice would be like, I'll just eat when I'm starving.
Right.
So now I'm on this consistency. I remember I was building the habit of just eating, like eating every 3-ish hours. I'm like, I got to put something healthy in my mouth. So how does it's a mindset shift when you're in this culture that we are in as women, and we're taught to count calories, and we're taught to jump on the scale, and we're taught, you know, it's all about what you look like and get beach body ready, to shifting your mindset into pleasure moments, living your life and feeling amazing in your body.
Well, I really think that the first step to shift is awareness of what diet culture is. So when you talk about society and right, like people only really caring like, oh, Heather, you present as thin, therefore good for you. Like no conversation about the fuel that you're putting in your body, the importance of moving your body, that's completely separate from what your body does with that, right? So the first step is awareness that we've all been steeped in diet culture from birth and taught that our currency is our appearance, and that that our power is our appearance, and that our worth is our appearance. So we need to look as thin and as young as possible. And so the diet industry, which is like $100 billion industry, is designed to keep women on this roller coaster ride of not enoughness, and the standards are always changing, right? So when my mom was a teenager, it was Twiggy. When my daughter is scrolling Instagram, it's the Kardashians. And it's always shifting this never-ending shell game of like, oh, you thought you looked good with big boobs and a small butt? We're reversing that.
I know. I'm like, now my body's in style. I have no tits and I got big booty.
Right. And so it's like, you know, as long as we're looking at culture to tell us what's beautiful and to tell us how we should look, we're always going to lose. And so the diet industry, I mean, I define a diet as something that's unsustainable for you. And if you can do it wrong, it's a diet, right? So all y'all listening who probably want to send me hate mail because you love your keto or paleo or whatever it might be, listen, you do you, boo. But if you can do it wrong, you are currently on a diet. And when you are spending your energy counting, weighing, measuring your food in your body, all that capacity, all that energy, all that brain power is taken away from creating moments, creating a business, eliminating the wage gap. So I talk about wage gap, not thigh gap. So the first step is really awareness, like, hey, this is a game set up for you to lose. And until you really understand that, you'll keep falling for it. Like, oh, it doesn't matter what restaurant you go to or what dressing room in a department store or boutique you go in, you will hear women talking about their latest diet or what's wrong with their body. And where does that come from? Because
wow, you look like you've lost weight. What diet are you on?
Yeah. What are you doing? How are you doing that?
Yeah.
And a good example of that is I'm currently obsessed with the Peloton bike. Do you know about Peloton?
I see that. And you will not go to a hotel without a Peloton bike.
I'm so obsessed. Although now the bikes aren't the same, but I have the app and I have used other bikes with the app, but let's be clear, not as good. But I'm obsessed with this bike because of how I feel when I use it, right? And so there are so many women that are like, I'm going to buy the bike without really tapping into what it is that's going to delight them and right? So it's like people see me doing the bike, they want the bike. And it's not about the bike. It's about just being committed to having fun, moving your body. It could be dancing for you. It could be a million different things, right? But like people see, they're like, what's your arm workout? What's this? What's that? And it's just this obsession with what are you doing that's still external. So it's like, wait a minute, let's back up and think about this amazing God pod that's yours. And what are the messages from it? And what's going to delight it? And that takes a lot of inside work that doesn't come from an app or a meal plan or a workout routine. All those things are fine if it's coming from more of a place of empowerment than a place of punishment.
So I get this a lot from women. How do I come from an empowered place when I'm seeking support or guidance? So example, just got a message from a client on my Voxer and she's like, when do I know to ask you for help versus me coming from a place of like victim and I feel like I actually don't have the answer? So I'm sure you understand what I'm trying to say.
Right. The difference between somebody being like, mommy, asking for help from you versus tuning into their own guidance.
Yeah. And I could be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Like there's a sense of collaboration versus you have the answers for me.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Me. Right. So there are a lot of people who buy the Bear process. They'll join the membership community or something, and they'll still have it in their minds. Like, she's going to help me lose weight. Even though they know that the whole program is about taking exceptional care of yourself and that weight loss might be a byproduct, it might not. But it's all about helping you tune into your own guidance. And so we start with awareness and then we move into pleasure. And they're like, when are you going to tell me what to eat? Right? So there's a difference between tuning in and wanting direction in a way that's like taking away your power. So I think the difference is, how does it feel in your physical body when you're asking for help? Because there's genuine curiosity. Like, what do you think about this? Versus somebody's just got to tell me what to do.
Yeah. I remember laying in bed having absolutely no energy. And I kept saying to myself, this was when I was recovering, how do you want to feel, Heather? And it was alive and connected. And I'm like, okay. And sometimes it was strong. Like my little core desired feelings would change once in a while, but alive was one of them. I'm like, how can I feel alive while I'm lying here in bed? Right. And it would be like connecting with my kids, just laughing, like doing these little micro action steps. And so now when I'm going to the gym, when I'm moving, when I'm eating, from watching you diving into the process, connecting with some other people in the food world where there's no restriction, like you can tell there's complete alignment with the message. I'm like, my body has probably not changed that much. And I don't care because I feel amazing. I feel great. And when I'm always asking people, like, what do you want? how does that feel? I get the blank stare sometime of like, I don't understand what you're saying, this F word, this feeling word. Like,
Right.
what is that? So do you, like, was that something you had to physically learn, like how to feel again? And what was that for you?
Yeah, totally. Because, I mean, if you think about it, when we're raised in diet culture to look at our body as a transactional thing, we're not in our body. We're projecting on our body. We're punishing our body. We don't view it in a loving way. And so therefore, and also most women have experienced some form of trauma in their lives, which dissociation is obviously a huge part of that. Let me climb out of my body so that I don't have to feel what I'm feeling. And so we're actually taught to discount our body, discount our feelings anyway, right? So most of the beginning work that I do with clients one-on-one for sure is helping them climb back into their bodies and understand a feeling state is a physical vibration in your body, and all feelings are good, like positive and negative, because they have a message for you. It's our internal guidance system. I didn't know what it was. I only knew good or bad. That's it. Like I feel crappy or I feel great or numb. And so moving beyond numbness, using food and alcohol and shopping and all those things to numb out, when you pull those away and a woman is learning how to feel, typically when I ask a client, how does that feel? They'll give me a thought.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I was thinking, and I was like, well, that's a thought. I'm not good enough or whatever it might be. How does it feel in your body when you consider that choice or that life or doing that thing? And so, yeah, I mean, and helping a woman understand that her body is her greatest asset in a different way than she thinks. It's not your currency, it's your barometer. So the wisdom of the body is so far superior to anything your mind is going to kick up, because your gut instinct is always leading you on the right path, but we discount it.
And what do you say to that woman who's like, the gut is saying, leave the job, send that email to Martha Beck, go take the life coaching certification, and her partner or family do not support that?
Right. So then it's like, how do I advocate for myself? I talk about making a scene all the time. How do I advocate for myself in a way that makes sense? So like my family, they all thought I lost my mind. Mm-hmm. My husband was like, and he is super supportive. And he's like, I want you to be happy. I will support you in any way that I can. I just don't understand how you think this new thing called life coaching is going to replace your real estate income. Like, how's that going to happen? And I couldn't answer it because I didn't know. I mean, back in the day, they weren't letting old people on the Facebook. We were on MySpace. There weren't communities of women talking about how to build businesses online and all that kind of stuff. So I was making it up as I went along. Mm-hmm. And it's helping a woman advocate for herself, to believe in herself so much that, okay, the people around me don't understand, but it's my job to understand. It's not my job to convince anybody. I have to convince myself. And so learning how to have boundaries, learning how to advocate for yourself, and learning how to stop being a doormat and pleasing everybody else, because any kind of change, even around people who love you, mm-hmm. it triggers something in them because it's new and it's different. It doesn't mean they don't love you. It doesn't mean they're not supportive. It just means you deciding to do this really different thing is going to trigger a lot of insecurity in them.
Yeah.
It's called a change back attack. And it doesn't mean they're bad or manipulative. It just means you have to be strong enough to understand that's what's going on, and that you can make decisions for your life even when those around you think you're nuts.
I'm like, welcome to the crazy club.
Welcome to the deep end. The water's fine.
The water's fine. What was that like for you and your husband? Was, like you said, he was always supportive, but did he have a change back attack? Was he like, oh my gosh, I know a few times in my journey my husband has, or it's been me being afraid that I'm going to lose him if I'm about to up level or things like that.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, at first he was like, oh, like even when I wanted to go to life coach training, it was a big investment. It was a lot of money for us at the time. And it was, a little bit of a song and a dance to advocate for myself in that way, that this is what needs to happen. And then when I came back, I think he was hoping I would go and that would be it. And then when I came back and I was like, it is on, he was like, okay, we had to have a lot of open conversations about how much money do I think I need to have in savings, how many clients and how much revenue needs to be coming in for me to feel comfortable that there's a tipping point happening. And so we had a lot of those conversations together. But there were still, like, I remember a couple months into my business, because it takes a little bit of a runway really to get your business off the ground and for things to start popping. And I remember him standing in my doorway with pie charts and spreadsheets in his hand and being like, basically like, show me the money. And me just like ordering him out of my, like, don't come in here with that. I am going to do this. It's happening. It's taking a little while. So there was a lot of thought work on my own part, like his fear would trigger my fear. And I had to be mentally tough enough using thought work and good mental hygiene to stay the course and not let his money issues or fears infect me. And I mean, there were some heated conversations that happened. And listen, with every new level, new devil, like with every transition in my business as this company has grown, there has been more stuff to talk about and more stuff to navigate as a married couple. When I started traveling a lot, that was a whole new thing. And, he mostly stays out of it now. He's like, have you noticed? Like, I don't ever give, because he would give all sorts of unsolicited advice about what I should be doing with my business. And I would just be like, you don't understand these internet streets at all. So stop it. So
you're like, thank you. I love you.
Yeah. Like, none of that applies to the online world. So, but thanks. So marriage it takes work no matter what you're doing. And especially if you're an entrepreneur and starting a company based on something that most people have never heard of, it's interesting.
Yeah. I just want to say, I really respect that, because, what I'm hearing you say is, yeah, we all have, like you said, new level, new devil. And this self-advocacy of really taking a stand for yourself and showing up is so, so important. And that these people, you're going to trigger their stuff, and they won't necessarily understand why you're doing what you do. But if your gut and your heart are in something, you got to explore it. And that is where you build that risk and resiliency per se.
Totally.
So let's dive into, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to dive into the bear process.
Sure.
I will never forget. I was in a coaching mastermind when I started almost 10 years ago, and I read Mama Gina's School of Womanly Art.
Yes.
It was all about pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, sex equaled pleasure.
Totally. Yeah.
I had no idea what pleasure was.
Right.
Beyond sexual pleasure.
Yep.
So can you please explain what pleasure is?
Totally. And I was the same. So you're right. When I start talking about pleasure, it's so interesting. Everybody jumps to sex.
Yes.
Which physical intimacy, physical touch is one category of pleasure. But the body, here's the practical side. The body is hardwired for pleasure. We're actually designed to experience pleasure on a regular basis. Yeah. And women in particular tend to put their own pleasure on the back burner. And then what happens as a result of that is illness, depression, weight gain, all those things. And so pleasure is the vitamin P, or the pleasure principle, is proven. It's backed up by science, y'all, that there are a variety of ways the human body is designed to experience pleasure. And you have to, it's not optional in my book. Like it's not, you say
like a basic human need.
It's a basic human need that you are hardwired to receive. So there's no earning it. We also, in addition to thinking it's just sex, women also tend to be like, well, I'll treat myself once I lose the weight or whatever, fill in the blank. So I talk about diversifying your pleasure and being devoted to your pleasure. And there are different categories like, yes, physical touch and physical intimacy, which sex is included in that. Comfort. So we tend to go to food and alcohol for comfort instead of finding other ways to experience comfort, which is why I never apologize for my Netflix binges, ever. I think it's necessary. Wrap myself in cashmere in front of a good Netflix binge, and I'm a happy camper. But there's also intellectual stimulation. Not having intellectual stimulation was the primary way or the primary reason that I was 35 to 40 pounds heavier than I am today.
Wow.
So the feeling state I was avoiding and numbing out was boredom, which is shocking. But if you think about what it is you're avoiding in your life, it could be that dissatisfaction and that boredom is causing you to do things that aren't healthy, and intellectual stimulation is actually what solved it for me, which could be like museums or books or watching TED Talks. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I have to buy a class, although that could be part of it, right? So physical touch, comfort, intellectual stimulation, straight up fun. So this is why a lot of my programs, I have something right now called Summer of Yes that's going on. It's all about getting women to get back into fun and luxury and entertainment, because probably 90% of my entertainment was coming from a wheel of brie and a glass of wine, when there are other things that we can do if we're intentional to bring an attitude of fun, but to have fun in our lives, right? And those are just some of the categories of pleasure. But if you, and certainly food should be pleasurable. So when I talk about food, it's not like, oh, you can't have any pleasure from food. Of course, your food should be pleasurable, whether it's to power you up or strictly to have a joyful eat. But I think,
but it doesn't have to be 100% of where you're quote unquote getting this pleasurable feeling or experience from.
Totally.
As you're binging on your Netflix and not paying attention with no intellectual stimulation.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I was doing. I was putting these little kids at the kitchen table with their little kindergarten worksheets from school, and I was bored out of my mind, and then feeling guilty that I wasn't enjoying motherhood the way that I was supposed to. So then I would go eat and drink to remedy that boredom when I just needed some adult stimulation other than fighting with other real estate agents.
Amazing. So oh gosh, I could just ask you so many questions, but it feels very, what do you think okay, let's talk about legacy for a second. Mm-hmm. At the end of your time, what do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for smashing diet culture. I always think about, I want my website and my online presence to be the hub for female empowerment, for women to come home to themselves. So really, when people talk about me after I'm gone, I want to be remembered as one of the change agents of helping women celebrate their bodies and not punish them.
I love this. And I love that it is so counterintuitive to what, like you said, just smashing diet culture, but the process is enjoyable. The process is fun. The process is everything, going against everything that we're taught as women as we grow up and we're raising children and, quote unquote, success and hustling and all of that stuff. It's like, this can feel good. And the better you feel, the more magic happens in your life and you're making an impact in your family and in the world.
Totally. I love it.
So what do your children think of you today?
Oh my God. It's so funny. Cause they're like, they mostly roll their eyes at me like, oh my God, here she goes. But I think that honestly, I've modeled for them. I think they would say my mom is outspoken. My mom lives her best life. My mom wants us to live our best lives. They know that. And I actually have this thank you card actually from my daughter that she gave me on Mother's Day, sitting right here. And she basically thanked me for, being grateful for the fact that I let her be exactly who she is. And to me, there's no greater honor in being a mother than children who recognize I just let them express themselves and be full out who they are and don't try to make them conform to what society wants them to be.
Yeah. Or who we want them to be.
Or who we want them to be, because who I imagine my children would be, oh my God, they are so, thank God. Because my vision for them was so limited compared to the amazing human beings they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't see, it's not our job to control them, right? The whole, the control that we desire is within ourselves that we're just unwilling to look at. And they're so much easier to manipulate. So if we just allow them to go and be free and we're like, okay, I got you. I'll provide, basic human needs and love you to pieces and guide you in the right direction. But I just believe becoming that person, being that role model is the greatest gift we can give them.
Yeah, I agree.
So where can people find more of you? Obviously you have your book, podcast. What do you got going on?
Totally. So if you're on social media, it's at Susan Hyatt, Hyatt. The hub for the book is letsgetbare.com. And my regular website is shyatt.com.
Perfect. And so the book has a process. It's amazing. Lots of to-dos in the book. Podcasts. Do you have multiple podcasts?
I have 2 podcasts. Yeah. So there's a Bear podcast. There's 2 seasons. And then I have another podcast for entrepreneurs called Rich Coach Club, which is about living a rich life, but also being unapologetic about making money. I
love that. Well, thank you so much, Susan, for being here.
Thank you, Heather.
This was a super fun conversation, and I know the ladies are going to get a lot out of it. So thank you again.
Thank you.
The shift has impacted my parenting partially by, I don't lose my shit, which I used to do. I don't do it as much as I used to do, let's say. Bedtime is still a bit of a challenge, but we're getting there. I think it's shifted my parenting in the sense that I see the joy in it. The joy in these fractions of a second that you have your 11-year-old wanting to give you a hug, even though, he sees his friends are around, and capturing those moments just in your heart, and then using those joyful moments to light your whole day and not dwell on the negative things like, I forgot his lunch bag, I've got to pack another snack or whatever. Focusing on the joyful things. These children are gifts and we only have them for a small amount of time. So I think it's been really just being able to see the gift that they bring us as opposed to the burden that they put on us.
Before I found Heather, life felt hard. I felt stuck. I had a newborn baby. I think she was 3 or 4 months old when I started looking for podcasts to help me be a better mom, because I felt the life that I had lived when I was younger. If my child had to go through that, I don't think I could live with myself. So I felt that I had to get my stuff in order to be the best mom for her. I was angry. I was very angry. Everybody around me walked on eggshells. I would come home and just constantly yell and scream and throw things. And it was like a tantrum every single day.
A dark, lost mother. I was putting all my love and energy into my children, but yet yelling at them nonstop. And there was just tons of shifts happening in my life. Leaving the corporate world was part of it. Not connecting with my husband and screaming at my kids, and I needed to change.
I think my main focus was presence. I had to work on actually living my life and being present for my life. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of times I was just like definitely autopilot through everything. I was really focused on how can I actually be here? How can I actually see my kids and not be like, oh, they just grew up and I don't know what happened, or, like go through my day and seeing patients and like, I have no idea who I just saw like 5 minutes ago, wanted to actually work on being there. And, that has led to a lot. Just realizing how disconnected I was from myself.